One of the strange things about it is that politics is now presented in terms of politicians and not politics. I don't think the media are interested in politics. They're interested in politicians, which is a whole different subject.
Media corporations don't cover the news when it comes to politics anymore. The political news coverage in 2000 was half what it was in 96. 96 was half what it was in 92. The third leading source of revenue for the media today, broadcast media, happens to be political ads. So if you're a politician, the only way you get heard is with ads. In 1981, the media was getting $80 million from political campaigns for ads. Today, the last campaign, they got $1 billion. That's why you've got to have millions of dollars to run for office as a politician. You're either a millionaire, you're able to raise large sums of money all day, dollar for dollars, and that's who goes into politics. And you are complicit in this system. You're not going to rock the boat.
98% of those who run for Congress, who run again, get elected, get reelected. We have a 98% return rate in Congress. Are you aware of this? I looked up the statistic. The old Soviet Politburo had a 92% return rate. All right? They actually have more turnover than we have in the U.S. Congress. Is that just the most embarrassing thought? Why do we do this? We've got to change these laws.
We grant these monopoly rights to TV stations. They don't pay a penny to the people for getting these monopoly rights to TV frequencies. Then they turn around and sell time on the public property and make billions of dollars and destroy our political system. All the while, they pay off the politicians themselves to keep getting these monopoly rights. The corruption here is dreadful.
The public is really at a loss. What do you do about that exactly? I'm not quite sure. I mean, they're probably in a perfect world, there should be a citizens movement about this. People should be marching in the streets. I mean, in some ways, we should be as angry about what's happened to our media as the Russians ought to be about what happened to their media. Now, that would be seen as heresy inside the networks. How dare you? We covered stories all the time last week. Look at this story. Look at that story. They would take issue with what I just said.
They'd probably call you un-American.
They would call me un-American and a bomb thrower, and I probably won't be on any of their airwaves anymore after this interview.
10 years ago, 50 companies ran the media in America. Now it's down to 5 to 7. Tonight, as I came down here, NPR was reporting on decisions that the FCC, under the control of Michael Powell, son of Colin Powell, who when asked about whether or not there was a digital divide in the world, said, "I'm more worried about the Mercedes divide. I'd like to have one, but I can't afford it." That's the commissioner of the FCC, who is about to lift all the ownership caps on big media companies, and an issue that is not covered in the media.
Michael Powell was actually quoted as saying that he has no idea what the public interest is. The oppressor here is regulation. He actually said that.
Michael Powell and Republicans in the office at the FCC, we were on the verge with our campaign of making major changes to the rules and the public interest obligations of broadcasters. The Federal Communications Commission had proposed rules that we pushed in this campaign. I mean, that hundreds of Americans in small communities, in large communities, pushed. We were going to get rules that would make local broadcasters much more accountable to their interests. Those rules were proposed once Bill Kennard was out of office and Michael Powell was in office. Those rules went into a drawer. They were never voted on.
Starting with Ronald Reagan, the holy grail of deregulation has been sold to the public, and the news media has largely ignored its disastrous results.
Once the Reagan administration was done, there were more rules, but they called it deregulation. It's almost this Orwellian use of language where you create new rules, but the rules change because they benefit industry, and you call it deregulation. And you say deregulation, and people feel that's good because people like deregulation. People like fewer rules. They like, depending on simpler, cleaner, old Western rules. But it's a trick. It's not really what's happening.
I remember when I first went into television, I believe the FCC rules were very stringent about how many television stations a network could own. I think it was 5. And of course, they had to be in different markets. And now, I know here in New York, we're talking about a duopoly. That's the new word. You have the probability, it looks like right now, that News Corporation will be the owners of the Post, Channel 9, and Channel 5 in the one New York marketplace. So yeah, the regulations have eased considerably. The whole ball game has changed, and precisely how that affects different people buying and selling different stations in different markets and how it impacts on the news, I don't know.
In my view, there are tremendous effects that are almost entirely negative. There's almost nothing positive about it. First of all, it leads to these companies are so big, their political power grows exponentially.
It's a democratic issue. It means that one viewpoint will come to dominate in most of the outlets that we use for knowing what's going on in the world.
Many people are not aware that when you watch television, you are watching a program produced by a large multinational corporation that has enormous conflicts of interest.
General Electric and NBC is a perfect example. How can we be sure we're going to get the kind of information we need to have about the nuclear industry, about defense contracts, and all of those things when NBC is beholden to this parent company? Why would they report on that? Of course they wouldn't. Why would ABC report on what's going on at Disney? They wouldn't. There's no point in it. And it's precisely for that reason that those companies want to own television stations in the first place, so that they can keep a check on those sorts of things.
General Electric has made it a very proud part of their policies that they are going to move jobs from the United States of America to China, to Mexico, any place in the world where they can get cheap labor. This suggests, obviously, that General Electric is deeply concerned about our trade policies. Over the years, General Electric has done its best not to pay taxes, or to pay as little as they can in taxes, taking advantage of all kinds of corporate welfare tax loopholes. Suggests very strongly that General Electric has an interest in tax policy. General Electric is a major polluter. Therefore, they're concerned about weakening environmental policies. It's not obviously just General Electric. It's the same thing with CBS or ABC. The conflicts of interest are enormous, and the result is that certain issues are talked about, certain issues are not talked about.
In close to 11 years, we've done more than 100 reports. They're reports and investigations about public servants screwing up, or systemic abuses of the public trust by public officials. Almost always get covered. We're the ones that broke the Lincoln bedroom scandal about the Clinton White House. We've done a lot of this kind of thing. When we do those stories, they get covered, and the media jumps on them, frankly. We have a news conference. We normally have 50 or 60 reporters, 4 or 5 cameras. But I have to tell you, when we've investigated corporations, for some reason it just doesn't get covered. What can I say?
See the Business Week cover a short while ago. The majority of Americans believe that corporate America is just one corrupt institution that needs to be reined in.
In some ways, corporate power is treated by our news media much like communism was treated by the Soviet press. You know, in the Soviet media, the bad commissar who didn't meet the tractor quota could be skewered in the media. Pravda or TASS could give the guy a hard time. But the system of communism was off limits. And in many respects, the occasional capitalist or firm that might make a bad tire or bad seatbelt can be skewered. But the system as a whole is always off limits.
In my entire political life, not one reporter has ever come up to me and said, Bernie, you know, the average worker is today working longer hours for low wages than 25 years ago. What the hell are you doing about that? Why do people have to work 50 or 60 hours a week? Bernie, what are you going to do about the plants that are being shut down in Vermont where companies are moving to China? What are you going to do about that, Bernie? Never been asked to me.
Why not?
Because those are questions that the reporters are not allowed to think about. You are, in a sense, you know, people say, well, do you think, Bernie, that there's a conspiracy, that Jack Welch is on the phone to every reporter for NBC telling them what to ask? Of course not. But what goes on, there's a framework of thought that you are allowed to have. And it goes from here, it goes to there.
Everybody kind of has the same mindset. You know, this story plays, this is a lead because it screams. This is everybody kind of has the same approach to it.